paint a picture for me of what someone looks like when they reach their full potential.
We asked 3,000 people if they feel like they're living up to their potential, and 96% said no. Goals are hard because Netflix is easy. Goals are hard because Instagram is easy. I want to help you find something you love so much it makes Netflix boring. The world is not designed for you to succeed. The world is designed for you to shop. You are essentially an ATM machine to most people. I think about goals as don't look at them through the frame of fixing problems, look at it through opening gifts. Opening gifts is like, wow, this is something that I was designed to do.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Live Change podcast. Joanna and I are here today. It's the beginning of the year, and it's a time when we start to process becoming the better self or new you or goals or resolutions. I know I'm steadily looking at about 50 that I'm about to do.
Or you get completely paralyzed with it and you don't know what to do now.
Oh, that's probably close to So as we enter into this season, we thought, what better way to do that than interview a really special guest? Here on the Live Change podcast, we're welcoming Jon Acuff, who wrote the book on goal setting. His new book, All You Need Is a Goal, is out now. And we asked Jon to come on to the Live Change podcast, and he did. And this is our interview with Jon. So welcome to the Live Change podcast, Jon Acuff. Jon.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to it.
Dude, we are so excited to have you on the podcast here. We've been looking forward to spending some time with you, talking about your new book and helping people kind of reach their goals and their full potential. But before we jump in, I want people that maybe aren't familiar with you and your work. Tell us a little bit about Jon Acuff. Tell us about you.
Yeah, so the kind of summary is I was born in North Carolina, but moved up to Massachusetts in the early 80s. My dad started a church up there, which was pretty unusual at the time. Grew up in outside of Boston from first grade to college. Went to school in Birmingham, Alabama at a school called Samford University, and met my wife there. We've been married going on 23 years. I have I used to say two teenage daughters, but my oldest daughter's 20 now, which is crazy to me.
No.
And yeah. And I spent about 15 years in corporate marketing, started a blog that gained some traction slowly but surely over time, ended up launching my own business. So for the last 10 years, I've done two things primarily. I've written books and I've gone to companies and churches and colleges to talk about the books. And I live outside of Nashville, Tennessee.
That's okay. So it all started with a blog, and you talk about this in the book a lot.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it just started with you had something to say.
Yeah. So what I found is people tend to change by one of two ways. They change through a involuntary crisis or a voluntary trick. So an involuntary crisis is you lose your job. You get some health scare from a doctor. Something happens. Your parents go through a divorce, and you're like, I gotta work on my life.
Yeah.
Or you go, I want that thing. I'm curious about that thing. So what happened for me is I started writing a little bit. I was stuck in my career. I'd hit a career ceiling in my mid-30s, like a lot of people go through. And I started to blog just on a whim. And what I found in working with tens of thousands of people on goals is no one ever wakes up one day and says, today I'm going to have grit. Today I'll be disciplined. Today I'm going to have persistence. That's never how it works. What often happens is you find something you desire more than staying the same. And you go, I want more of that. And then it opens up. So I didn't stop watching as much TV as I used to, or I didn't start getting up earlier because I was a disciplined person. What happened is I started to blog and I didn't have any other time in my day. I had two kids under the age of 4, a full-time job, Atlanta commute. So I just started to see my time as logs, and I wanted to throw those hours into this fire that was this new idea God had given me. And so then I started to get up at 5 a.m., not out of discipline, but out of joy. So I always tell people joy is the best alarm clock. It just is. It gets you up. It gets you out the door. So that's what happened for me. So when I tell people about goals, I'm like, I want to help you find something you love so much it makes Netflix boring. That's my mission.
I love that, man. I love that. So you didn't set out to become, Jon Acuff. You didn't set out to become author and, national speaker or anything like that.
Gray-haired man. No, no, none of that was my. No, and I think that's I always tell people, I had a friend say, God is a light unto your path, not a light unto your mile. And I love that idea because I've always said, God knows if I said to God, give me the 10-year map, give me the 5-year map. Yeah. He's smart enough to know I'd worship the map and I'd ignore the cartographer. I'd ignore the person who drew the map and I'd start worshiping the map. So he gives me a daily relationship. So even if I tried to tell you I had a 10-year plan, no, I didn't. Like no one who says they had a 10-year plan included 3 years of COVID in it. No one in 2018 was like, here's all the next 5 years are going to, like, you didn't know. And so it's always this dance from, I always tell people, like, you're faithful to planning and being detailed and knowing the condition of your fields and getting the horse ready for war. But there's so much of it that's in God's hand that's going to unfold in his time, in his way. And that's the dance, that tension between leaning into your gifts and using them and also going, God's going to do it in his way. And I'm going to get to be part of that. He's going to unfold it. He's going to unravel it.
So you didn't know where the journey was going, but it's taken you to, you've written several books, you've, spoken, all over the place, and you have your own
in
podcast.
Your church. I've spoken in your church.
That's right.
All over the place, including Lancaster.
Oh, dude. And we love having you in Lancaster. Yeah. Not this time of the year though. Right now it's winter time and it's
no. I don't even like flying over Pennsylvania right now. I don't know. I asked the pilot to do a loop around.
I'm telling you, man, the weather's angry right now. It's cold and bitter.
Yeah.
But so just to finish that train of thought here. So you got someone listening, you got a young guy listening, and he's looking at just the path and he's at the very beginning stages. What do you recommend him to what's his step?
So I always think about what would I tell 22-year-old me or 25-year-old me or 28-year-old me. So one of the things I'd say is find somebody older and smart and ask them questions. I tell young people all the time, you have access to time machines. They're called adults who have already done what you're trying to do.
So good.
And will tell you what they've already been to the future. So ask them. And so like for me, finding somebody 10 years ahead, 15 years ahead is a great start. Find somebody who has the type of life you'd like and then ask them a couple questions. And if you want to do it in an easier way, find somebody and ask them what book they would recommend you read. A great start to a mentor kind of conversation is to say, send an email, say at church, whatever, say at work, hey, I really like the way you lead. Could you recommend one book? And then when they recommend it, here's the crazy part, actually read it and then respond to them and go, here's 3 things I learned. Do you have another? Because all of a sudden they're going to know you have skin in the game. Here's the reality young people don't understand. Older people love helping young people who are hustling. We love to help an 18-year-old who's hustling. We love to help a 22-year-old who's asking questions. We love to help a 24-year-old who's asking questions that has some skin in the game. And it's different. If you're 48, it's different. Nobody goes, I got to go out of my way to help this young 48-year-old. They're the future, these 48-year-olds. So like, take advantage of your window. If you're young, you have a window to ask wise people questions where they're more likely to answer.
That's good advice.
So I'm curious, you mentioned for you, it started with a blog.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you look for potential, or where does reaching your full potential come from? And so when you started, I'm sure you didn't know that blog was going to turn into everything that it has. But how did you just decide to start somewhere?
Yeah. So what's interesting, Joanna, is that I always tell people like discipline is contagious. Consistency is contagious. So it starts with a small thing. You'll often hear people, I remember I worked with Dave Ramsey for 3 years and we'd have people come to our events and go, hey, Dave Ramsey changed my marriage, or Dave Ramsey helped me lose 100 pounds. And be like, he's never written a health book. But what happened was they worked on their money and then that area, that discipline spread to other areas. So for me, that's what happened. I started to write. And then like, that's one of the things people don't like this, but it's true. Like when you have a side hustle kind of thing, it makes you better at your day job. There's a lot of people that are like, I hate my day job. I don't want to do my day job. I'd love to do something on the side. Well, if you practice being an average worker for 40 hours a week, you're not going to hustle on the weekend. You've practiced in your body. You've told your body, we are lazy, we underperform, we do the bare minimum. And then you think you're going to turn into this superstar on Saturday. You're not. So what happened for me was as I started to blog, as I started to be more disciplined, it was like, oh, I want to be a better employee. Like I want to be better in meetings. So it started to spread to other areas of my life. So I didn't have to say, where can I see potential I can change? It started to change for me, with me. So I didn't sit down and go, I want to be a better employee because that would be the right thing to do. all of a sudden, if I'm going to work really hard at 5 a.m. on my blog, then that momentum of that is going to continue into the meeting I'm in at 8 a.m. and going to continue into the meeting I'm in at 2 p.m. So it started to spread that way in a really fun, surprising way for me.
Yeah. I'm curious too. So I feel like we live in a culture where there's some tension in that hustle, or, well,
Yeah.
then when am I resting? Or what does that
Yeah.
life balance look like? So I'm
Sure.
curious, how do you continue to wade into not, whether it's missing potential or seeing potential
Yeah.
or achieving the life that you want while still living in that, that, well, I need to make sure I'm balanced and I want to find a
Yeah.
lot of rest. Like, what does that look like?
That's so
Yeah, I
cool.
think that's a great question. So I would say the people I know who are burned out are not burned out because they work too hard at their passion. They work too hard at their purpose. They work too hard at the thing God called. Like burnout technically is your fire was burning so bright, it eventually burned out. The people I know who are quote unquote burned out often don't have a purpose. They often don't have a passion. They're not the ones going, I got up at 5 a.m. to work out. I did like, they're stuck in this never ending cycle of apathy and like purposelessness. So I'll meet guys that'll go, man, I'm just feeling burned out. And I'm like, from what? Like you're barely doing anything. Like you are stuck in the doldrums. That's not burnout. We as a culture, you like to overuse the label burnout. And so what I encourage people is like, man, when you find something you care about, like, and you have boundaries. I have met people who even in their purpose don't set good boundaries
Yeah.
and they go beyond, and then there's danger. Then there's like, I don't speak 200 times a year. I love speaking, but that wouldn't be healthy for my family. It wouldn't be healthy for my marriage. So like I have boundaries around that. But I think that we as a culture love to overtalk self-care and rest long before we need it. Here's something I'm pretty passionate about. We have like depression wear. And what I mean by that is Target and Walmart sell shirts that say, I can't adult today. Like your brain physically reacts to the thoughts you put into it. There's tons of science. My favorite study about this was done at NYU. They had two groups of students, college students, come in, and they said to him, here's a word bank, make some sentences out of these words. The second group, they said the same thing. So a bunch of words, make some sentences. The second group's words were a little different. They put words in there about being old, words like slow and retired and bald and even Florida, which is funny, to think about. But so then they go, the second part of the test is down the hall. Please walk down to the end of the hall. And that's when the real test started, because they secretly timed how long it took the students to walk to the end of the hall. The students who had read the words about being old physically acted old. They walked slower. Their physical gait changed. That's how powerful the words you are. So imagine you wear a shirt all day that says life is hard. Is it possible at the end of the day, you start to believe life is hard, or I can't adult today, or like, so I think culturally we've got a huge subtle attack on hope, on energy, on purpose. Like you can go through any mall in America and be like, wow, these shirts are all telling me, don't try, don't give up. Life is so terrible. It'll always be terrible. I can't adult. Like what? Anyone who like signs that say like, don't grow up, it's a trap. That's a dumb person who isn't having fun. Like when somebody says adulthood is terrible, you're just doing it wrong. Adulthood is amazing. Like if you do it the right way, but our culture says stuff like the 22-year-olds. I remember people used to tell me when I was that age, they'd go, hey, go to Europe while you can. Go to Europe while you can. As if Europe was closed when you're in your 30s. Like
they're checking IDs.
Yeah, they're checking IDs. Like, so we have this that's the other thing that I don't think we give enough credit to is the cultural momentum against you living in your purpose.
Yeah.
It's massive and it's persuasive.
And
so that's the other thing that I fight against.
That's good. And it's interesting. I feel like one of the things we've talked about just over, a couple of episodes is like, once you're a life changed by Christ, the enemy doesn't want you to continue to reach more potential that's going to help you impact.
Oh yeah. Now you matter. More. Now you matter.
Yeah.
Like now you're on the radar.
Totally. So like, I'm curious, like, how do we just avoid the temptation of distraction then, or what have you found, or in just avoiding some of that temptation to not fall into some of those traps so we don't miss our God-given potential or the path that he has for us?
Well, I mean, the reason I wrote All It Takes Is a Goal is that I really believe you can accomplish your God-given talent if you just turn it into a goal. Like, let's make it measurable. Let's make it actionable. So you asked, okay, well, how do we avoid that? So part of it is what you spend your time doing. So I'll meet people and they'll go, man, I just feel like I'm in a funk. I'm so negative. I've got such a bad attitude. And I go, well, tell me about your day. And they'll be like, well, I stayed up late last night. And so like looking at YouTube. So I woke up a little late for work. And then I got on Twitter and argued with some people about politics. And then I drove to work and I hung out with 5 people who hate their job too. And we talked about that. And then on the way home from work, I listened to a podcast about a terrible crime that happened in my neighborhood. And then I argued on Facebook and Nextdoor with some people that I was mad at. And then I ended the day by watching a Netflix documentary called People Who Look Like Me Getting Murdered. That was the theme of it. It's so weird that I feel negative. I don't know, John, what? You practice negativity all day. Yeah. So I do the opposite. Like I'm a very negative person by nature. I'm very jaded, cynical, like probably because I grew up in Massachusetts. Maybe we're all mean up there. I don't know. But I'm not naturally positive. But what happened to me is I've tested negativity versus positivity for years, and the ROI on positivity is so much better. Even if you take the Jesus out, like even if you take out that our God is like rejoice, I say again, rejoice. Like rejoice isn't a maybe in our faith. Like it should be a very significant command, not a casual like, hey, I think you should rejoice. So even if you take Jesus out of the equation, it's better for you to lean into positivity. So I don't like starve my negativity. I drown it in positivity. So a practical thing I do for that is like today when I worked out, I listened to a sermon for the first 20 minutes of the workout. And then I listened to a positive book that I've been enjoying. And then I listened to like a really like upbeat, aggressive song to finish the workout. Love and that. Then like, and so I'm deliberate about how I'm like what I'm feeding myself intellectually. I'm deliberate about the conversations I have, and I treat my thoughts seriously. And so I don't like, and I also see like, you have to understand the world is not designed for you to succeed. The world is designed for you to shop. Like you are essentially an ATM machine to most people. And once you know that, you can make different decisions. So goals are hard because Netflix is easy. Goals are hard because Instagram is easy. Right now, there are 100,000 of the greatest psychiatrists, developers, writers, advertisers that have ever lived working very hard with one thing in mind, Joanna's time. That is their number one goal. Like Netflix doesn't want you to get in shape. Like they want you to binge watch a show. Yeah. Like even dating apps hope you don't get married because then you break their business model. Dating apps want you to have 100 meaningless hookups. Because if you get married in some significant relationship, you take the money away. Their goal isn't lifelong relationships that happen the first time you use our app. Of course not. And it shouldn't be. But once you understand that and go, oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I need to like, Instagram's not for me. It's not trying to help me. Like, it's not to say I don't use it, but like I use it with like I'd use like something that's not for me.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's literally, John, you're basically trying to get people out of the matrix. I'm dating myself with a 90s movie
that's a great reference, dude. That's a great reference.
So like they're in this consumer matrix where it's like, just be as cathartic and lethargic as you can possibly be. And you're challenging people that, dude, there's more. Like you want to
There's a ton more.
Take the blue pill or the red pill, whichever it is.
But think about the challenge. Like, and I think there's grace in that. I think somebody who's listening to this right now who's stuck, give yourself grace. Like you're stuck because the odds are stacked against you. Like, here's an example. There's teenage boys at the high school my daughter attends who are $1,000 in the hole for gambling. They've been gambling on DraftKings and, those sites. And it would be easy for a dad to go, well, I didn't do that. Yeah, because when you were 12, you'd have to drive to a riverboat in Mississippi to gamble. You didn't have a casino in your pocket. Get off your high horse.
Yeah.
And so we have to give our kids grace. We have to give ourselves grace. But then we also have to go, okay, then what do I do? Like, what do I do in response? And it is better. Like, I've never met somebody that said, man, I was going to hang out with some friends, but instead I stayed at home and I scrolled on Instagram for 4 hours, and that was the right decision. Like I feel renewed and refreshed. You ever feel great after you binge Netflix? No, you don't. And so like, that's the part for me. Like and again, I like Netflix. I watch Netflix. Like I sound like the people you live near in your church. Like I sound Amish right now. Yeah. I'm not Amish. I promise. But I'm just becoming more and more deliberate because I have things I want to do with my time that
Yeah.
really light me up, that are long term, slow burn, big, bright joy. I want that to get my time.
Okay, so now we're going to dive into you've spent exhaustive amounts of time writing this book to help people
Mhm.
reach that potential, like to be who God built them to be. And so to start out, like paint a picture for me of what someone looks like when they reach their full potential. Like
Yeah. So
paint a picture for me.
I define potential as the gap between your vision and your reality. So the vision of how you think life can be, had hoped that it was, and the reality of how it is, which is
Okay.
actually encouraging because often when there's a big gap, we feel sad in that. We feel depressed. And I go, no, 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 no. The gap is big. That just means there's a ton of potential. And as you work on it, you get to close that gap. And the overlap is so fun. We've all had that moment. We've all had a moment, and maybe it was 10 minutes, 5 minutes, half hour, where you were at work and you led some meeting and you remembered for a second that you're a leader and you hadn't done that in a couple weeks, and all of a sudden you had this moment. So that's what potential looks like. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be massive. It can be small things where you felt again the vision of who you are capable of being and the reality of who you were in that moment overlapped, and it feels, some people say it feels like you're in flow or you're dialed in, you're in the zone. We've all felt that.
Mhm. Good.
But you've done some research, and so like it sounds like people listening might assume that most people are living up to that potential.
No, no, dude, no one is. No one. So, yeah, the way I write my books is I find a need in my own life, a problem, a challenge, an obstacle, and I go, I wonder if I can work on that. Like, is there like I want to change that. So I
Yeah.
wrote soundtracks, which was about mindset and overthinking because I'm an overthinker.
Oh,
I
by
wrote
the way, pause on that, John. We did a series. Basically, we took a lot of the themes of soundtracks,
oh,
and
awesome.
John, I'm telling you, it was one of our most popular series. And our senior pastor Jason wanted to specifically say thank you
Oh,
because,
that's super encouraging,
dude,
dude.
your work on soundtracks was like just amazing. So
Oh,
like, let's
thanks,
not
man.
let's not blow past that because we're talking about all you need is a goal, but go back and buy soundtracks because that is a ridiculously good
Oh,
book.
thanks, man. Yeah. So that's how I pick topics. So with this one, I was on a college tour with my oldest daughter, and it was this college I'd gone to, and I felt this great sense of regret about how my college experience had been. Like it was just a train wreck all 4 years. And I was driving home from Nashville to Nashville, and I had just written soundtracks at the time, and I knew I could choose my thoughts. I knew I could change my thoughts. Like, I mean, I didn't come up with that. Like, renew your mind, take every thought captive. Like, this is all just biblical. And so I was like, what could I do going forward? Like, if I didn't live into my potential in college, I can't change that. That was 4 years, but I might have 40 more years
Yeah.
on the planet. What could I do? And so I always look for a thing in my own life and I try to change it and I test it. And then I go to other people need it. Because then, like, if I can identify that a lot of people need it, then it's worth putting in a book. So I commissioned a research study with this PhD named Mike Peasley. He's a professor here in Nashville where I live. And we asked 3,000 people if they feel like they're living up to their potential, and 96% said no.
Mm.
And so then I was like, oh, wow, it's not just me, it's everybody. And then the second stat that got me was that 50% of people felt like 50% of themselves was untapped, which is like only opening half your Christmas presents every Christmas morning. And so then once I had those two things, my own need, I had like an idea that I wanted to kind of test, and I could see that a lot of people needed it. Then I'm like, I'll spend years talking about this idea. This is worth deep diving into.
It's cool.
I love that. Do you think that like unrealized potential has adverse effects on people? Like
Oh, 100%, dude.
come
Yeah.
on,
Like,
take me
no.
there.
So I talk about this with people all the time that here's just an easy example. I believe that when you don't express your passion, when you're not pouring it into, like when you don't have an outlet for it, it doesn't go away. It just turns into anger. Because when you don't have emotions to express, you just use the only one you have available, which is anger. So why are people so furious on the internet? They're not passionately creating in any other part of their life. Like happy, busy people don't have time to hate people on the internet. They're too busy doing other
Yeah.
stuff. But when you don't have an outlet and you're not living up to that potential, it just mutates. It mutates into shame. It mutates into bitterness. It mutates into anger. And it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It just turns into things you don't want it to turn into. So yes, there's a significant, I mean, scientists have studied that where you remember the things you didn't do more than the things you did.
Why do you think that some of that just eludes us? So I know we talked about distractions a little bit
Yeah.
earlier, but is it a matter of being lazy or unmotivated, or is there something more to the story?
I mean, I think it can be lazy, but I think some of it starts with fear. I think fear often is the start of it. Um, so it could be something as simple as, you never saw it modeled in your childhood.
Mm,
Like I remember I was on a podcast with this guy, Steven Scoggins, and his dad's soundtrack that he would say in the family is Scoggins don't get ahead, Scoggins get by. So imagine you're a little kid in that house and your dad, who you look up to, is saying over and over again, hey, we don't get ahead. We don't get ahead. We don't get ahead. I would never say to him, that 23-year-old him, like, why aren't you trying to get ahead? His soundtrack for 15 years was people with our last name don't get ahead. And so sometimes it's old family of origin stuff. Sometimes it's, fear. It can be procrastination, perfectionism. Um, Sometimes it's not knowing where to start. You're overwhelmed. Sometimes it's the busyness of life. There's also that, I always tell people when you hear advice from authors, you should say, are you married? Do you have kids? What are their ages? Do you have a full-time job? Like, you should ask questions, because that's the other thing, is that sometimes you get advice for a season of life you're not in yet.
yeah.
Like I had to get up early at 5 a.m. in part because I had two kids under the age of 4.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't write on a Saturday for a couple hours and tell my wife, like, hey, I really want to just spend some time thinking about adjectives today. So if you could take the kids, that'd be like, that wouldn't work. So sometimes it's people are busy, they're overwhelmed. So I think there's a variety of reasons, but the biggest one by far to me would be fear.
Yeah, that's good.
Wow. So, okay, John. So, like, as we start down this journey of like, okay, I want to create goals. I want to create achievable goals. I want to reach my potential. Like, okay, yeah, you got me. I'm ready here. One of the first things you do is it's so whiplashing, because you say, now let's not look forward. Let's look back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, because like, no, I want goals, John. I want to, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go to the
Yeah.
future. And you go like, now turn around.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, so part of that is I've got this thing called the Guaranteed Goals Community, where it's an all year program where I help real people with their real goals. And so that's changed my advice, because I've spent the last couple of years in the trenches with real people. So there's things you say on Instagram, and then there's things as they really work in somebody's real busy, messy life. And so one of the things you say on Instagram is something like, sometimes you have to jump off a cliff and grow wings on the way down. Like, and you're like, that's never how gravity works. That's just really not how, like, a friend of mine used to say it, a God version. He'd go, sometimes we jump out of the plane when God was going to land it. We go, I'm doing this for Jesus. And he's like, I didn't, oh no, don't put that on me. I didn't tell you to do that. Like, we were going to land this in like 2 months. And then we crash and we're like, Jesus messed up. And he's like, whoa, no, I didn't tell you to do that. So some of the advice about, you've got to figure out your life. You have to have a plan. You have to have a vision. And sometimes it's just, we misinterpret things. So one of the things I think we've misinterpreted is the obviously fantastic book, 7 Habits by Stephen Covey. One of his ideas is begin with the end in mind. And we've misinterpreted that into, I need to know the end before I begin.
Yeah.
And I need to know the final step. I need to know where this is going. I need to have the plan. I'll have people say to me, they'll go, I want to write a book, but I don't have, like, what if somebody tries to steal the content? And I'll go, have you written a single page? And they're like, no. And I'm like, you're trying to prevent a thing that is so far from ever happening. Like, it's so far from ever happening. So I felt stuck. Like, anytime someone would say, what's your big hairy goal? What's your life plan? What do you want to be when you grow up? That paralyzed me, dude. And I've written a ton of these kind of books. So I felt stuck in my present. I felt intimidated, overwhelmed by my future. So it only left me one direction. And so all I did was I wrote the words best moments on a piece of paper in the Augusta, Georgia airport. And I just kind of opened my head and my heart to look for moments from my past that were best to me, where God lit me up, where he, the sun felt different. And it wasn't super deliberate. I didn't know it'd be in a book. It was, again, like, it was from my own life going, okay, I got to figure out some sort of thing. And what happened was, what was a couple items turned into 171 items.
Wow.
And I was surprised by it, because I've done a million goal exercises before. I'm such a goal nerd. But the first thing it taught me was gratefulness. Like everybody talks about you should be more grateful, but like I always go, well, how? This taught me gratefulness. Like I could actually see things I had forgotten. Number two, it taught me self-awareness. You can't change your life if you don't have self-awareness. Like the leader who gets fired for anger thought he was passionate. Like the young person that's dated 10 losers doesn't have the self-awareness to go, wait, I'm the one thing in common. I got to work on this before I get back into the dating pool. And so it made me self-aware. And then it was also the opposite of everything I'd been taught in that, like, I believe we're obsessed right now as a culture with sadness and trauma. Like I saw a study where for every 100 scientific studies on sadness, there's only one written on joy. Because we as a culture, so what happens often in culture is we ricochet to the other, like we overcorrect. So we go from not talking about trauma at all to everything is through the lens of trauma. So like every counseling session I'd ever been to, we would spend tons of time on trauma. Every small group I've ever been in, the first 6 weeks where we told our stories were 6 of the saddest weeks of going, here's another terrible thing that happened in our marriage. It was 6 weeks. Like very rarely do I have somebody go, I want to explore the things like, what's the joy? We think there's nothing to learn from joy. And so all of a sudden I started to learn about who I really was from all these moments.
Yeah.
And then when you ask your head and your heart to find moments that light you up in your past, they automatically start looking in your present. They automatically start going, like in a moment, you'll go, oh, like I remember this woman, because I tested it with hundreds of people. She said, I had a best moment today. I was watching my grandson get off the bus. And when he got off, he changed his entire route to make sure he could stomp through a puddle. She said, that was such a best moment for me to watch. And that wasn't massive at all, but she might have missed it had she not said to her head and her heart, hey, be on the lookout for best moments, like be on the lookout. So it was just this crazy experience. And then again, I tested it with people and I'd say, come up with 30 and they'd always come up with 50 or 100. Like there were people that came up with 300. Like once they got started, it was so counterintuitive to culturally what we say is things like, don't look back. You're not headed that direction. As if you have nothing to learn from your past. Like what? Like, which is easier to go dream about the next 20 blank years or find 15 things from the last 5 years that really lit you up? And that's what this exercise became.
And now take that with us. So like, you created your own list. This isn't something you're just telling people to do. You created this epic list, which by the way, there were significantly more large crustacean on your list than.
Yeah. Who knew they'd make so many appearances? So many cameos.
You talk about a buddy of yours in the book. You got a giant lobster, and it was a moment for you.
9 pound, yeah.
I didn't even know they made them that big,
dude. It was $5 a pound. It was $45 for an. Are you kidding me? Best deal of the century.
9 pound lobster. Like, this was like an obese lobster.
No. It was like a 70-year-old lobster. Like that lobster
really old.
He had gone through World War II. He survived like Nazi submarines on the coast of
but
Canada.
He didn't survive Jon Acuff and his friend.
No, that was dude. It was the best.
It's funny. We actually go to the grocery store, and my kids love stopping by the lobster tank.
Yeah, of course.
And so now we have this fun game, and none of us know the truth, but we're like, wonder how old that guy is. It's like, that's a little baby lobster, and like that's like the old man in the tank.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so you can tell your kids you met somebody who had a really old lobster in his life.
Yeah, I love that.
So like, but this list, how does this list become future goals? Like, how does like looking at the past and looking at what brings you joy and lights you up and those best moments, how do they become future goals?
Dude, it's so simple. So what always happens is anyone who does this goes, I want more of that. There comes a point in the list where you go, oh, I want more of that. So essentially you're saying, I want to be deliberate about that. I want to be intentional about that. And often you find things you forgot you loved. And like, I talked to somebody today and he said, man, I'm kind of an introvert and I thought travel would be high on my list and I'd be all about the travel. And the only travel trips I put down were ones where I met new people. I think I'm really about people. And so you learn about yourself. And so then it flips into, I want to do more of that in the future. And then it becomes this really subtle life planning tool where you go, okay, look at all these things. I want to bring these forward. I want these in my Tuesday. I want these in my next month. And you're not doing fake goals. What trips people up around goals is they write down things they think they should want to do. So they go, I'll do this, I'll do that. And they inherit all these goals from society or they inherit goals from like parents, and then they inevitably don't do them because they don't really care about them in the first place. They were fake goals to begin with. But when you plan from a list of things that you go, man, these things lit me up, they're so much more fun to accomplish because you actually care about them.
Wow.
Yeah. What I love about that is I fail at goals when it's something that I want to do versus someone who I want to be closer to becoming.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I feel like a lot of what you just shared, even around what lights you up, I feel like, especially as followers of Jesus, is a signal to like, hey, God's teaching you something. Something about the way that he's wired you is making you react in that way. So become more like that.
Love that.
Yeah,
And
lean
so-
into that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so like, I love that you just shared so much of those moments. It sounds like were also moments of like, this is who I am, not necessarily this is what I do.
Yeah, you're not like, I think about goals as it's not, don't look at them through the frame of fixing problems, look at it through opening gifts. Fixing
Love that.
problems, man, it's so shame-based. It's like you kind of beat yourself into performance. Opening gifts is like, wow, this is something that I was designed to do. And the problem, I think part of it is if you don't believe we have a generous, fun, creative, giving God, it's hard. And here's a simple sign like that I see people do. I see this in Nashville all the time. People will go, hey, do you like living in Nashville? And some Christian will go, we love it. I can't see us ever living somewhere different unless God moves us. What a jerk God that is. Like, we love it here. We love it. Unless God ruins it, unless he's trying to ruin us. I used to see that in college. People would be like, man, I hope he doesn't call me to the mission field. He won't. If you're not wired for that, like that would be like if I said, man, I hope God doesn't make me teach calculus. Well, of course not. I'm a writer. Like I'm getting excited about like Netflix and goals and like he's not in heaven going, hey, you know how you love this thing? Oh, I can't wait to ruin it. I'm gonna like, no, he doesn't have me building houses for people because I'm not a carpenter.
Yeah.
Like he has me doing other things because he knows me and made me and loves me. And if like, that's the other side of it.
I love that, John. And I love the simple fact that God put the passion in you. The very thing that loves calculus was it's like, it's not like God was surprised by that.
Somebody else got that. Somebody like, I remember Dan Cathy, a Chick-fil-A CEO, he used to tell me, because we did a bunch of work together and I learned a ton from him. He would say, I believe the yoke is light and burden is easy is like when you're in your thing, to you it is. People on the outside go, I could never do that. So somebody might go, I could never run a church. I could never be a stay-at-home mom with 4 kids. Yeah, exactly. But I'm in my thing, so the burden is light and easy. And so like, this is my thing. And so that to me is what the really fun, like God angle of it. But where it turns into a life plan is, so you start to categorize it. So that was the other element that happened is, I have a list of 171 and I go, but are there categories? Is there a framework? Like I'm always going, what do I do with this on a Tuesday? I don't like when people give me advice that's fuzzy and vague. I'm always going, what do I do with this on a real Tuesday? And so I study the list, study other people's lists. And it was like, and I put this in the book, it was like that moment where you stare at a 3D poster and the image pops out. There were 4 categories that every moment fit into, and they're so simple. One was an experience. So a moment you experienced. One was an accomplishment where your effort was part of the moment. One was a relationship where the people were the moment, and one was an object. And the metaphor I use in the book is, if you go on a hike by yourself, that's an experience. If you go on a hike with a friend and they're going through a divorce and you pour into them, that's a relationship moment. Like we go to a small group dinner every Wednesday night. If I went to the same restaurant without those people, it wouldn't be a best moment. The people are the point.
Mm-hmm.
An accomplishment moment would be if you hiked that trail faster than you'd ever hiked it. Like you have a Garmin and you tracked it and you did it, you crushed your goal. And an object would be you took a pine cone home because you wanted to remember the moment. So what happened was I started to encourage people, label your lists, like, because I think you're going to learn something. And people were always surprised. So they'd go, like, for me, it was like, man, I'm really into accomplishments. And I kind of grew up, I heard some, Christian leaders be like, oh, you shouldn't, success is bad. Jesus rode a donkey, like all this broken success talk. And I felt bad about accomplishments. And then God was like, hey, look at your list. Like the majority of accomplishments, I made you to go, let's go. And then other people would be like, man, I'm a relationship person, but I haven't been pursuing relationships. No wonder I feel so low.
Mm.
Like COVID wrecked me. I'm built for relationships. I call it the most honest personality test you'll ever take because I've lied on every personality test to some degree. Because some of the questions you're like, I know what
Yeah.
they want me to say.
Yeah.
They go, okay, would you ever help somebody? Do you like being generous? Like, you're not gonna be like, nah, screw people. Nah. Like we all
great.
on personality tests are like, I could see me doing that. And you're like, So this one is just built off what's real. And again, you look at these categories and it teaches you. And then even more so, you go, man, I need to add more experiences to my life. I need to be okay with accomplishing. I need to find more relationships. Like it changes how you live forward.
Yeah, it's funny. So I don't know if you would remember this, but it was a moment that stuck out to me. So you were at Orange Tour a couple years ago, and one of the
I hope
things
it's a good moment. I hope
it
this
totally
is
was.
okay.
And you were just kind of sharing that, like, sometimes even in like the space that you put yourself in, then that changes how you pray or how you talk. And so the example that you gave was when you get into church, that sometimes you find yourself in a dark place and the worship leader starts praying, and it's like a sad prayer.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that has just, and then the kind of challenge you gave, and so I would say at our church, I don't know that that's always the case, but it was a good word picture to also remember to go to God with joy and to say, hey, God, it's okay to say, hey, God, thank you so much for making me love this thing. Or, hey, my life is actually feeling really good right now. And you don't always have to find yourself in that place where you're only communicating with God around like, oh my goodness, like everything is so terrible. And we should do that. But just what that balance is around, like, God also wants to hear, oh my goodness, thank you for this opportunity. I actually loved it. Can you give me more of it? And so anyway, that struck me.
God. Yeah, like I don't know if I said that then, but the lesson for me years and years ago was I told God, like, I only know how to cry with you. I don't know how to dance with you.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was like, then I just got to give you lots of reasons to dance. Let's go. And so for me, the joke I do that I did that day was, why does every worship leader assume I've had a terrible week?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, that was it.
why do they always go like, we don't know what garbage you came in carrying today, but you're a garbage person. You're terrible, but we're glad you're here. You never hear Nike do that. Nike never goes, hey, gross person on a couch. You're disgusting. You want to buy some sneakers? They share the promise. And my thing is, we have the real promise. Like, we should be the most joyful. So definitely say, if you came in here carrying something, we're here for you, blah, blah, blah. But also be like, also, how beautiful is our God? Also, how great. Like, I want to high five God too, not just go, here's the sucky things that happened to me this week. I want to be like, dude, did you see? Like, I remember I was praying maybe about a month ago. I was like, God, I'm sorry I'm so obsessed with growth. Like, I'm sorry, like I'm always trying to grow things. And I felt like he was like, hey, in the Bible, who grows and who destroys? Like, have you ever seen the enemy grow something? And I was like, not really. He's like, yeah, that's right. He's all destruction, all lies, all like evil can only destroy. That's why, like, even when you see stuff in culture and you go, I don't know what their point is. If it's evil, there's no new thing. It can only destroy. God's all growth. And I felt like I was like, no. Like, who do you think put the desire to grow in you? Let's go. That's one of those happy moments where I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Totally. And I feel like even following the parable with the different people who are given different things to go invest. And it's like the one who just was like, you know what, if it's been given to me, like, then it's got to have potential. I'm going to go find it. And so just not wasting those opportunities that God's putting right in front of us to go after the potential he has for us.
Oh, I love that. And so, John, like in the book, what you do is you now take this like desire, and a lot of books stop there. Like, and a lot of communicators stop there, and they basically say, "So go get it." But then you take it a little bit further though, and you go like, "Let me help you shape some goals." Because for me, like I'm all good on motivation. I got vision for days. I got the desire. I can put the picture of Chad the way he wants to look like, in the gym, like I'm all good. But you take it a step further, and that's one of the things that makes your book special is then you start creating sizable goals, and you right size goals for the certain time to get to the guaranteed achievement. So just real quick, tell me about that. Like what it, and obviously you'll have to read the book because there's a lot more to it, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we've only talked about the first 3 chapters. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
This is just the first 3 chapters. So again, I'm always going, so what do I do with that? Like, what do I do with that? And I like books like that where they go, so then try this, or here's what works. And the other thing is my books matured over the years when I tested them with people first and then wrote them after. So I'll be 48 in a couple weeks. God forbid I write another memoir book. Like I'm 48. Like book 10 of like I found a new interesting thing about myself. Like get over yourself. Like what? So I've learned to have a lot of fun going like there's 37 real stories from real people in the book. Because then you don't have to identify with me. Like
Yeah.
I want you to go, wow, that single mom, here's how she did it. Or wow, that retiree, here's how that person did it. So that's where the book takes the next turn is I go, okay, now that you know that about yourself, what do you do with it? Well, let's start with an easy goal because what happens is I say people bounce between 3 different zones: a comfort zone, a chaos zone, and a potential zone. So comfort zone, we know that one's familiar. We talk about it all the time. It's the pajama pants zone. It's no actions, no goals, no progress. You're stuck. You're in a funk. But the one that gets more people than anything is the chaos zone, which is too many things, too many actions, too many goals, no progress. I did a survey of some of my readers to see how many goals they had, and the average number is 22.8. Like, do you know why people feel overwhelmed? Because they're trying to juggle 22 balls at the same time. So what happens is you go from no goals to trying to do everything. You get inspired by a podcast, a sermon, whatever, and you go, I'm going to do meditation. I'm going to do a quiet time. I'm going to read the entire book of Leviticus 4 times every morning. I'm going to, reach out to 7 girlfriends. And you go, whoa, it's too much. I had a buddy just last week say he works 50 hours a week and he wants to change 20% of that time to focus on a new thing. And I was like, you're going to go from 0 hours a week to 10 hours a week? Like, dude, that's pretty steep. Like, what if you did 2 hours a week for 4 weeks in a row and tested it? So the first thing is you go, what's an easy goal look like? How do we ease into that? So like, how do we incorporate that in a way that's sustainable and fun and enjoyable and let it grow? And so I describe it as a ladder. Most people, Chad, their goal ladder has 2 rungs. The bottom rung is day 1 and the top rung is the completion of the goal. So they go, I want to lose 50 pounds. So the bottom rung says day 1, the top rung says 50 pounds, and there's no rungs in between. And like if your neighbor, you live in Pennsylvania, if you had to like clear snow out of your gutter or whatever, or an ice dam, let's get real specific. And you borrowed a ladder from a neighbor and they brought it over and like, here's my ladder. And you're like, dude, there's no rungs. And you're like, yeah, there is. There's 2. You just have to jump 14 feet in the air and pull yourself to that'd be a terrible ladder. So my whole thing is, what if we added rungs every 6 inches? Would it be easier to climb that ladder? Of course it would. And you could turn easy goals into what I call middle goals, kind of those you're growing the action, you're spending more time, you're investing more, all the way to the guaranteed goals. And the guaranteed goals are where you get to that top, where you've got so much momentum. This thing is happening. Like it's going to happen because you're not guessing. The results of the easy goals taught you how to do middle goals. The results of the middle goals have told you you're going to get to the top of the ladder. It's a really fun way to actually accomplish things.
Yeah, it's funny because everyone talks about all those things we're going to start in COVID. And it's like, how many of us are doing like a 10 push-up a day? And it's funny because personally, I am very proud to say I started a COVID habit and have kept it.
What is the habit? Is it sourdough? Like right now you're making sourdough?
Let me tell you.
Total brag right now.
But no, like you guys can't judge me for this. It is literally just washing my face before I go to bed.
That's great.
And so it's like we're at 2023. So 3 years later, I've just recently added a moisturizer because I was like, I can't go after a whole skincare routine because I'm barely washing my face before I go to bed. But I think that's a great example of like, yes, we all started to try to do all the things. How many of us are doing any of those things today?
Yeah.
A good example of this, John, I had 15 or 20 resolutions at the beginning of this year when we started this podcast. It was one of our very first episodes. I'm doing 0 of those right now.
Yeah, 0 for 15.
I was all chaos mode. I was all day long.
See, we're taught that it should we're taught to go big or go home. We're taught if there's a book called Streaking, and in the book they say your goal should be so small at the beginning that when you tell people they laugh. Yeah. So you go, hey, I'm gonna wash my face at night. They should go, is that all? And or I'm going to write 100 words, or I'm going to read like 2 verses, like, or whatever the goal is. And then again, prove to yourself you can do it, grow some momentum. I want you to have a big, crazy goal, of course. Like nobody's inspired by a small goal. I'm just saying easy, small goals lead to the big, crazy goal. That's how you get there.
That's smart. That's so smart. I'm reading that book on your recommendation. It's a couple wrote it. I forget
Yeah,
their
yeah.
names.
Yeah, Jamie, and then somebody not named Jamie. I don't know if I forget what the other name
We'll
is.
link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
So John, obviously God's given you a message. You're a faithful guy, and God's given you this message. What's your prayer for this book? What's your prayer for the people that are reading? What's your prayer for our listeners? What's your and I know like having read the book, your hope and prayer is not to reach just one person.
No, that's fake.
That's a
so
lie.
fake. Anytime an author says that, they're lying. Like even churches, like if a church ever has a big event and they go, if only one person hears the gospel, is all worth it. You're not going to say that if it fails. The pastor's not going to go, hey, that event was a disaster, but I heard one person heard the gospel, so don't worry about it. If that's your goal, tell somebody at a gas station the gospel on the way home from work, and don't it's fake. I just want us to be honest. No, my goal would be that people open more of their gifts, that people, discover that. And what's fun is that it always starts with self. It always ends in service. When you start to do this, you always want to help other people do it. Like you always go, man, I didn't know it could be this fun. Man, I didn't know it could be like this. And then the thing that I'm really jazzed about right now. So I mentioned the community I'm doing. We're starting in 2024 to really be deliberate about time. So I really took a long 6-month look at what does every goal have in common? Because I meet all these people that'll do really well in one goal and then they won't translate into another. So they'll be like, they'll pay off debt, but they'll really struggle with their health, or they'll declutter, but they won't be able to write their book. And so I really spent a lot of time going, what do they have in common? What do they have in common? And the only thing that every goal has in common is time. And so I'm really passionate about how do you invest the time where it needs to go? Because I say time is our most valuable resource, but it's also our most vulnerable. It only knows how to do one thing, and that's flow. And it's our job to steward that. So how do we? And so what geeked me out about it was I figured out some success levels for goals, and then we turned them into badges, like old school, like Boy Scout kind of style. Like I was
Awesome.
so actually, I'll show you, I don't know if, and I'll describe them as people are watching. But so I said, okay, I want to have easy wins for people. So if you do 10 minutes, like you're a rookie.
Oh,
Like
that's
you're
awesome.
you're a rookie.
I
So
love that.
if you do 10 hours, now you're a student. Like you're now a student.
That's awesome.
And I said, okay, if you do 100 hours, which might not seem like a lot, but it only takes 75 hours to get a private pilot's license. So if you put 100 hours into a goal you're passionate about, that's amazing. And then I said, okay, if you do 250 hours, you're a pro at that point. Like
Wow.
to get your license in the state of Tennessee, as like me teaching my daughter took 50 hours. You do 5 times that amount, like you're really doing something. And then if you get to 1,000 hours, you're an expert.
Wow.
And so for me, I can't wait to see people engage in this content in this community. And I know there's going to, like, we already did, it's the end of the year. So we did kind of our like brag table. What did you accomplish? And the accomplishments were amazing. It was people that said, I lost weight. I went and got my degree. I repaired my marriage. And I wrote books. I get books in the mail from people all the time that go, I had a book inside me for 10 years, but I didn't think I could do it. I plugged
Awesome.
into the community. Here's the book. So that's what I'm excited about. Cause I really believe like if I can get people to spend 100,000 hours doing things they're called to do like that, you are so like, it changes marriages, it changes individual lives, it changes whole communities. Like, because now you're talking about real time spent in a real thing. And and again, the rest of the world is pushing the exact opposite direction. So I'm like, oh, it'd be really fun to kind of cause a little bit of frustration.
I love that. That's cool.
John, one of the things Joanna referenced was the story of the talents that Jesus talks about.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what you're doing, pal, is you're going out
Oh,
there
thanks,
and
man.
you're helping people dig up the talent that they have.
Yeah. My
buried.
thing is grab a shovel. Like, I'm like, let's grab a shovel. Like, let's
Yeah.
go. Like, you
It's-
got it. Let's grab a shovel. And it's not too late. There's not an age.
Mm.
There's not, again, we put a lot of pressure on young people as if there's a moment, but the joke I always do is like, when you're in your 40s, there's no top 50 under 50 list. Like in your 30s, there is like top 40, under 40. In your
Yeah.
40s, people are like, yeah, you should be doing stuff. What are you doing? And so I think regardless of what age you are, it's a great time to go, I think I'm capable of something. I wonder what I could do.
All right.
cool.
Well, Jon, how can people find you? How can people find your book, find your
Yeah.
work, and keep following you?
Yeah, so I'm just jonacuff.com, jonacuff.com. The community I have is jonacuff.com/goals. That's pretty easy. Just jonacuff.com/goals. I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal, and then the book's available everywhere. I read the audio, which is super fun. And so, yeah, I'm very available on the internet.
Yeah, if you're ever just reading a Jon Acuff book, do get the audio because Jon is notorious for sharing little tidbits.
10 bonus stories in this one. I like to go off I just think it's fun. Like, I realized, Chad, I don't have the benefit of a British voice. Like, if I had a British voice, that book would sell 100 times more.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Everybody who hears a British voice is like, this is really smart. This is like C.S. Lewis, I think. Doesn't matter what they're saying. But for me, with my very normal American voice, I have to add bonus stories. So that's just the reality.
I love that. And I feel like you're always running on Instagram. So if
Yeah.
you need a good tidbit of like a life lesson you've had while you're running, I feel like you do that often too, which is
that's
awesome.
just a goal. So like the reason I do the videos after running is it's a perfectionism hack. If I do a lot of videos in my office, I worry about the angle, I worry about the words, I worry about the
that's good.
lighting, and I get stuck with perfectionism. So I was like, if I film them after running, I'm sweaty, I'm already hyped on endorphins, I'm going to do it in one take. Like I'm not going to worry about the lighting. So I'm constantly looking for little things like that to go, what's a practical way to deal with perfectionism? And
That's
that for
awesome.
me was one.
Yeah, you can literally help people run through walls.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm doing.
You're so
Let's
amped.
go. Let's go. Yeah.
Jon, I can't thank you enough for giving us time. Please don't be a stranger. We'd love to have you back here on the Live Change podcast. So
Thanks, guys.
all right, take care, Jon. So I love interviewing Jon Acuff, and one of the reasons I love Jon as a communicator and as an author is he's approachable. Like
Yeah.
his thoughts are brilliant, but his approach and his packaging is like something that I completely understand. There's all of the message in the book and in the interview, you could just tell it feels like you're just talking with a friend at coffee, and I just love that. So what were a couple of your takeaways from like just the conversation with Jon?
Yeah, totally. I would also it's not about him. Like, I love that he just is like, hey, I've experienced some things. I'm trying to learn too. These are some of the things I've learned along the way. Just love his heartbeat around then how do I help other people do those same things?
Yeah.
And so even the things he was just sharing around what inspires him to put content out into the world. Yeah, just love that.
Yeah, it's honestly like, what God has put in you is meant to be shared out there. One of the things I love is his looking back, at what lit you up, and God's lit you up. God's given you passions, and when he was talking about the words that we use that stifle our passions, like the how we basically set ourselves up for failure in the fact that we just become lethargic.
Yeah.
And even the words that are on our sweatshirt is like, I can't adult today and stuff. I was like, man, we do that, and we create a cycle of negativity. And then when he said there's, no wonder everyone's so bitter on things like Twitter and stuff because they're not reaching their potential. And it's like,
Totally.
I kind of wonder, like, what does God have for Chad? Like, what if I can begin to climb the ladder, whatever ladder that is, and climb those rungs, how can Chad be a better person, but Chad's family be a better family, Chad's neighborhood be a better neighborhood, by one person reaching their full potential?
Totally. Yeah. And I love, even just in our context, being lives changed by Christ, that it's like, it's just me. It's not me growing for me.
No.
It's actually me growing into more of who God's created me to be. And so I don't need to be paralyzed by that.
No.
But there are tools that can help me get closer to that. And so, one, communicating with God. And so even like around what lights you up, like I think that God loves to hear from us what things we enjoy, and then wants us to expect that he will help us find more of those things, but then also be looking for them and reminded of them, and not be afraid to step into things that might feel uncomfortable, but instead trust that, like, hey, if God has wired you this way, or if this is more of like who God wants you to be, he will help you get there. And so just being willing to lean into that.
When Jon said, like, God creates, the enemy destroys.
Yeah, so good.
I was like, it just made me want to be like, what does God want me to create today, this
Mhm.
week, this month? And it was powerful. So hope you enjoyed the interview with Jon Acuff. We're giving away some books. So hopefully you are still listening here, because we want you to get a copy of Jon's book. So all you have to do is, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment on the YouTube channel in the comments, and we're going to choose 5 people to get free book copies of Jon's book. All you need is a goal, but you can also get it anywhere books are sold, Amazon and wherever else, Barnes and Noble. But make sure you get a copy of the book. It's really worth the read. So
what if our audio listeners, can they go on our channel, leave a review, and just mention this podcast
Absolutely.
and what they loved about it?
Absolutely.
We'll pick a few winners that way too.
You betcha, because we want to get a copy of this book in a couple people's hands. So let us know if you want a copy, and we'll try to get it out to a couple people. As always, like, subscribe, share. We're gonna have a lot more exciting guests coming up. We have the docket for guests this year is gonna be amazing. So make sure you hit that reminder button up there so that you are constantly getting reminded, so you don't miss any of the exciting new content coming out this year on the Live Change podcast. But as I always say, now that you're a life changed by Christ, go live that change out every day.